Elon Musk thought it would be just another panel until Jasmine Crockett opened her folder, revealed decade-old secrets, and left him speechless, then collapsing on live TV. They didn't think she'd show up with more than a few prepared remarks, but she walked in with a manila folder that wasn't on any schedule. It was just after 7 p.m. Pacific time. The lights inside the Fremont Civic Auditorium in California were painfully bright. The kind that makes even the most polished public figure sweat. CNBC had partnered with Stanford Law to host the live panel. The future of free speech and corporate power. Big names were expected, but all eyes were on the two headliners, Representative Jasmine Crockett and Elon Musk. The audience had barely settled into their seats when Crockett arrived on stage in a crisp black suit, her signature glasses catching the glare. She nodded once to the moderator, then took her seat directly across from Musk, who looked unfazed. Dressed in his usual dark blazer over a t-shirt, Musk had done this before more times than anyone could count. He smirked slightly when introduced, cracking a dry joke about regulating sarcasm on Twitter. Laughter rippled through the audience. He looked calm in control, but Crockett didn't laugh from the moment she adjusted her mic and leaned slightly forward. There was something different about her presence, not aggressive, measured, like she knew something nobody else in the room did. The moderator began with the basics: platform, accountability, algorithmic influence, political bias. Musk answered with his usual flair, half tech guru, half provocateur. He leaned back, gesturing with ease, spinning familiar phrases about free thinking and decentralization. Then came Crockett's turn. I have a few questions. She began, flipping open the manila folder without looking down. Simple ones, really. Musk glanced at the folder, then quickly away. Cameras caught it, so did the viewers online. Something flickered. Her first question wasn't explosive, but pointed. Mr. Musk, can you confirm whether the diversity and inclusion data for Tesla's Fremont plant from 2014 to 2017 was ever formally submitted to the Department of Labor? Musk blinked. I'm not sure I have that on hand, but you remember the internal audit results from 2016, don't you? She didn't wait for his answer. She flipped a page in the folder and slid a printed document toward the moderator. It showed the audit summary, unreleased, indicating serious gaps in racial equity, including ignored complaints and blocked promotions. The room went still. Musk shifted in his seat. Where did you get that? He asked, the smirk gone. It was forwarded to my office, she replied simply, by a former employee, one of 37, who signed a letter alleging retaliatory practices for speaking up. The moderator's eyes widened. People watching from home started tweeting. A journalist from Politico sitting front row typed something urgently into her phone. Musk looked irritated, now cutting in, with all due respect, Congresswoman, this isn't a courtroom. No, she said, it's not, but it is live. The camera zoomed in slightly. It was only the first 10 minutes, but Crockett hadn't even begun the real part yet. The moderator hesitated for a second, unsure whether to intervene or let it ride, but Crockett wasn't waiting for permission. She turned another page in her folder, revealing a printout marked with 3 thick red lines. This, she said calmly, is an internal communication between your executive leadership and outside contractors, dated July 18th. 2015. In it, a Tesla manager refers to a group of factory workers as, and I quote, low-skill liabilities who don't fit the image we're trying to build. The air in the room tensed. Musk leaned forward, squinting at the page. That document isn't authenticated, he said, but the email header is, and the source verified it under penalty of perjury with the House Ethics Committee. The audience stirred. You could hear someone inhale sharply in the third row. The moderator cleared his throat and adjusted his tie. Musk opened his mouth, then closed it again. This was not part of the prep he had done with his comms team. I'm not defending that wording, he said, finally brushing his hand across the table. But this is years ago. People evolve, companies evolve. Crockett raised her eyebrows. Sure, but when those same people remain in leadership positions, when the culture doesn't change, when complaints are still being filed years later, does it really sound like evolution? Or does it sound like silence dressed up as progress? She didn't need to raise her voice. That was the part that made people lean in at that moment. The director of the broadcast made a decision. Stay tight on the two-shot. Don't cut away, don't pan to the audience, just let it play on Twitter. Hashtags were already stacking up. Hashtag Tesla emails Crockett versus Musk live on CNBC. And somewhere in the control room a producer whispered, we're gonna trend in under 5 minutes. Musk shifted again, reaching for his water, but his hand missed the glass by an inch before finding it on the second try. A small thing, but it didn't go unnoticed. Jasmine, still composed, continued. One of those contractors, Samuel Reeves from Stockton, filed a claim in 2016. He was allegedly fired for reporting unsafe working conditions, including exposed wiring and machinery missing safety shields. OSHA didn't find the complaint because it never reached them. The report was dropped in-house. I don't handle individual HR cases, Musk responded. I'm not asking you to, she said. I'm asking why your company suppressed the file and why Reeves received a no-rehire status. Less than 2 weeks later, another document landed on the table. Musk stared at it. For once he didn't have a line ready. That was the moment it shifted. Not just the room, the viewers, the staff backstage, even the panelists flanking the two at either end. Everyone felt it. The dynamic had turned. The richest man in the room was the one looking like he wanted out. Crockett wasn't gloating, she wasn't performing. If anything, she looked like she was having no fun at all, just methodically doing what needed to be done. When people see innovation, she said, they want to believe in the people behind it. They want to believe they're good, or at least trying to be. But when ambition covers up harm, someone has to speak up. A pause. That's my job. Musk tried to lean on his usual fallback charm and pivot. Look, I understand the need for scrutiny, but this feels more like a coordinated hit than a fair hearing. You're not on trial, she said, yet it was quiet, but you could hear it. Someone in the back muttered, damn, but Crockett still hadn't opened the folder's final section. The camera stayed locked on them. No graphics, no commercial, just Crockett still flipping pages, and Musk now visibly unsettled. The moderator made a weak attempt to steer the conversation back to the topic of platform responsibility. Congresswoman, I'd like to shift gears to social media governance. If we could. She looked at him briefly, then back at Musk. I'll make that transition, she said. Right after this, the next document she slid forward was thinner but heavier in meaning. This, she began, is a series of written statements collected over the last 9 months from workers, former, current, and temp, at your gigafactory outside Reno. Most of them were hired through third-party agencies. None had direct HR access. Several had their pay docked for complaining about safety hazards. One described being told he was replaceable after nearly losing 3 fingers in a machine jam. She paused, letting it settle. Would you like me to read the names aloud? Musk exhaled. No. Then I'll assume you're acknowledging the report. I'm acknowledging that there are always improvements to be made in large operations, but framing me as a villain doesn't help anyone. Crockett didn't flinch. Neither does pretending your hands aren't on the wheel. A murmur went through the audience on the live stream. The viewer count jumped by 20,000 in under a minute. The moderator's face had gone pale, his cue cards clutched tightly in one hand. He was a finance guy used to numbers, not tension, but this wasn't a debate anymore. It was something else. Musk leaned forward, steepling his fingers. You're painting a picture that doesn't reflect reality. Every company has disgruntled workers. Sure, she replied, but not every company has whistleblowers ready to testify before Congress. That hit. He sat back in his chair, slower this time. The tension in his jaw had crept up around his eyes. You have names? He asked. I do, but out of respect for ongoing legal protection, I won't say them here. Musk smiled thinly. So we're doing trial by innuendo now? No, Crockett said, we're doing accountability, and frankly it's been overdue. The lights in the auditorium hadn't changed, but everything felt sharper, colder, like everyone watching was finally tuned into a frequency they hadn't noticed before. Backstage, Musk's publicist texted an aide. One word, abort. The aide replied, too late. Crockett leaned back just slightly and pulled out one last sheet. For this segment, let's talk social media now, since that's where this will all end up anyway. Musk nodded slowly, as if bracing. You acquired Twitter, sorry X, with the promise of restoring free speech, but within 2 months your company was actively suspending users for posting screenshots of Tesla employment lawsuits. He frowned. That's misinformation. Most of those accounts were bots, not the one belonging to Christina Dillon. She's a real person, former engineer at the Nevada site. Her posts about pay discrepancies went viral, then disappeared. She's here tonight, by the way, sitting 3 rows back. Musk whipped his head toward the audience. A woman stood up slowly. No signs, no shouting, just presents. You're welcome to speak, Miss Dillon, said Crockett. The moderator raised both hands. This is highly irregular. Not for me, Jasmine said. Christina's voice was quiet but steady. They told me to sign a non-disparagement clause after I left. I refused. My posts were flagged as harmful content. I lost job interviews because of it. Musk was silent. I loved working there, she added, until I didn't feel safe. No theatrics, no drama, just her story hanging in the air. The moderator looked frozen. Crockett took it from there. Freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences, but when power gets to pick which voices count, that's not freedom, that's branding. Musk looked straight ahead, not at her, not at Christina, just through them. But Crockett was just warming up for the most damaging evidence in her folder. The folder was nearly empty now, just 3 sheets left, but everyone in the room could tell those last pages weren't leftovers, they were the core of everything. Jasmine Crockett waited until Christina sat back down, then placed the next document flat on the table. No build-up, no dramatic pause, just a headline typed in clean, bold font: Confidential Settlement, Tesla Motors Inc. versus Jackson Family. Musk blinked at it. Does that name sound familiar to you, she asked. He hesitated. We've had many settlements. I'm asking about one. Christopher and Nadine Jackson. Their son Elijah worked at your Fremont facility in 2013. He was 17, hired through a contracting agency. He was electrocuted while performing maintenance on equipment. He wasn't certified to touch. Musk shifted in his seat, but said nothing. The internal investigation blamed him, claimed he ignored protocol, but the family obtained texts from a supervisor instructing him to get the floor cleared, certified or not. That supervisor is still with the company. The room went silent again. No coughs, no whispers, just silence. Crockett's voice didn't rise. Your legal team reached a private settlement. You inserted a gag clause. The Jacksons were told that if they spoke publicly the funds would be pulled. They stayed quiet. She tapped the paper. Until now Musk stared at the document like it might disappear if he looked long enough. They reached out to my office after hearing about this panel. Crockett continued. They're tired of holding this in, and frankly I don't blame them. She looked out at the crowd, not to the camera but to the audience. They lost a son and all they got in return was silence and a check with conditions. Someone near the front audibly muttered, Jesus. Musk finally spoke. That wasn't handled directly by me. I don't make those legal decisions. Crockett locked eyes with him. But you endorsed the internal review. You signed the HR memo that cleared the site supervisor. Your initials are at the bottom. She pulled out the second to last page right there. He didn't even look at it. Instead he turned toward the moderator looking for relief. Can we take a break? The moderator looked toward the producers behind the camera, but Crockett stepped in. I'll be quick. She unfolded the final page. This is an excerpt from a 2018 Slack conversation between senior engineers on the Gigafactory design team. They were discussing ventilation modifications for a new overseas facility in Cebu, Philippines. Musk perked up slightly. That project was cancelled. It was, but not before the team pushed through ventilation adjustments that dumped industrial waste into a nearby estuary, a protected estuary. The local contractor tried to report it to authorities. His contract was voided. His emails, she turned the page, were forwarded to a Tesla legal affiliate in Manila with the message, kill this softly, no blowback. Musk looked like he had been hit. Crockett leaned forward. And what's more, your name is in the thread. You replied to it. You wrote, and I quote, no headlines, please handle this cleanly. The room didn't react with gasps anymore. They'd gone past surprise now. It was just weight, crushing weight. Musk lowered his eyes, said nothing. I'm not here to grandstand. Crockett said, I didn't fly here to attack you. I came here because the people who trusted your mission deserve to know what's behind the curtain. Then quietly she added, and because one of those people could have been my brother, could have been my dad, could have been anyone. The moderator finally raised his voice. I think we need a break. He signaled toward the crew. The cameras panned out, but right before they cut, Elon Musk swayed forward slightly. His left hand gripped the edge of the table. His lips moved, but no words came. A moment later his head dropped. A voice from backstage yelled, call someone. The stream cut to black, but by the time they went off air the internet was already exploding. It didn't take long for the clips to spread. Even before CNBC cut to a placeholder screen, someone in the control booth had already texted a friend, Musk just collapsed. It's real. Inside the auditorium chaos took over in waves. Aides ran forward. The moderator backed away. The panelists seated on either end stood up, frozen mid-step, unsure if they should help or stay out of the way. Musk was slumped forward in his chair, unmoving, his face colorless under the hot stage lights. Crockett didn't move at first. Her hand stayed still, resting gently on the edges of the folder. Then slowly she stood, not panicked, not triumphant, just alert, calm. A woman in a headset sprinted across the stage toward a crew member, waving EMT credentials. Cameras had stopped broadcasting, but audience members had their phones out, some recording, others stunned. Elon's lead assistant knelt beside him, patting his back, whispering urgently. Musk's eyes fluttered, but he wasn't fully there yet. Should we call an ambulance? Someone asked. No, another voice said. His team's handling it. A few rows back Christina Dillon stood, clutching the strap of her bag. Her expression wasn't gloating either. It was complicated, like watching someone who once inspired you fall apart in front of a crowd. The production staff began ushering the audience out quietly, efficiently. One by one the seats emptied, but by then the internet had already seized it. Clips of Crockett reading the Cebu Slack messages were going viral on TikTok. A short edit showing Musk's blank stare before he slumped over was posted to YouTube and hit 500,000 views in under 20 minutes. News outlets jumped in immediately. MSNBC live panel with Elon Musk ends in collapse amid heated questioning by reporter Crockett. Fox News Congresswoman presses Elon Musk with bombshell allegations on live TV. BuzzFeed, did Elon Musk just get exposed for a decade of misconduct? Internet reacts. People weren't debating whether it happened, they were arguing what it meant. Some said it was stress, others said exhaustion, a few floated absurd conspiracy theories, but most simply asked the question everyone else was thinking, was any of what she said actually true? Back inside, EMTs finally arrived late thanks to downtown traffic. Musk's vitals were stable. He was conscious again, but quiet, not combative, just still. They helped him up, slowly guiding him off stage, through the back hallway, away from the cameras, away from the crowd. No words, just footsteps. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett waited. She didn't leave the stage right away. She stood at the moderator's table, watching the audience file out through the rear doors. The folder, now almost empty, sat beside her. A young woman from CNBC approached cautiously. Do you want to give a statement? Congresswoman Crockett looked over at her and shook her head. Not yet. She exited through the side hallway. No entourage, no rush, just her walking past cables, crates, and stunned staffers. Without saying a word, outside the parking lot buzzed with murmurs. No cameras, no reporters, yet just people trying to process what they just witnessed. By midnight, Twitter had over 2 7 million posts tagged with hashtag Crockett. Her name trended higher than Musk's, but while the internet spiraled with reactions, one message quietly appeared on her office's official page: truth doesn't need to scream, it only needs to be heard. But by sunrise, the headlines were no longer about what happened on stage, they were about what happened off stage, behind the curtain. The sun hadn't even risen in Los Angeles when the phone started ringing at every major newsroom in the country. Editors barked orders over speakerphones, reporters scrambled to verify documents, producers begged for footage that no one seemed authorized to release. Yet McCracken's team was ready at 6 a.m. Eastern. Her office released a digital packet, scanned copies of redacted statements, time-stamped screenshots of the Slack exchanges, copies of the whistleblower affidavits, and a note addressed simply for the public record. No dramatics, no exclusive interviews, just the facts. And that's what made it land harder. By 7 a.m. major outlets had confirmed the authenticity of 2 of the internal emails, one of the OSHA-related documents, and parts of the Jackson family's legal settlement. CBS aired a quiet, somber interview with Nadine Jackson. She sat at her kitchen table in Rancho Cordova holding a photo of her son. He was proud to work there, she said, until he didn't come home. That clip alone had over 10 million views by lunch. Tesla's board issued a brief statement calling the panel a politicized attack without due process, but it read like a defensive shrug, and no one seemed moved by it. Employees leaked Slack chats in real time showing internal confusion and fury. One anonymous Tesla engineer posting under a verified Reddit account wrote, "We weren't warned, some of us didn't even know about the Cebu mess. Now I have 3 friends calling me crying asking if they were complicit." Meanwhile, Elon Musk's health became its own headline. CNBC confirmed he hadn't been hospitalized but was under observation. His team declined further comment. That only fueled speculation. Rumors swirled: panic attack, low blood sugar, a silent protest. But those theories didn't distract from the main story. If anything, they highlighted how deep the damage ran. The shift was noticeable. Within 24 hours, lawmakers started calling for hearings, not performative ones, but real oversight. Senator Felicia Gwen from Oregon called for a special session to review whistleblower protection laws in tech sectors. Congressman Julian Reigns from New Mexico asked for a re-evaluation of Tesla's government contracts. More telling, 3 former executives from Musk-owned companies reached out to the press offering to speak publicly, but Crockett didn't bask in it. She issued one short statement to the press: "This isn't about a man, it's about a pattern. We've mistaken brilliance for immunity that ends now, while others would have capitalized on the moment." Booking morning shows, live streams, and podcast circuits, she disappeared from public view for 2 days, and that made her even harder to ignore. Twitter, TikTok, and Reddit were ablaze with side-by-side edits, Jasmine calmly presenting evidence, while Musk stumbled to respond. Memes were born, sure, but so were deeper conversations. Former employees across various industries began sharing their own stories under the tag Chai. No more silence in forums and message boards usually dominated by startup hype and hustle culture. People were quiet, reflective. Crocker's supporters hailed her as a truth teller. Even her critics had to admit she brought receipts. This wasn't a hit job, it was a reckoning. Meanwhile, Tesla stock slipped, not a collapse, but a meaningful dip, enough for shareholders to take notice, enough for analysts to start whispering about stability. And behind all the noise, there was something else happening, a shift in tone. A 16-year-old high school student from Fresno uploaded a video titled "Why I Want to Be Like Jasmine Crockett." It was just 3 minutes long. She talked about her mom being let go from a plant job after raising safety issues. She talked about watching the panel with her aunt and crying. That video went viral too, but while the public was reacting, the legal system was waking up. And it wasn't going to stay quiet. The Monday after the panel, everything felt different in Washington. It was quiet in the halls of the Rayburn House office building, but not the usual quiet. It was focused. Tense congressional staffers buzzed behind closed doors. Internal memos were being updated. Committees were being reshuffled, and Jasmine Crockett's name was suddenly on a lot of short lists. By noon, it was official. The House Committee on Energy and Commerce reopened its dormant file on Tesla's federal contract history. A subcommittee on worker rights under the Department of Labor announced a new round of audits, and the SEC was reportedly reviewing investor communications for potential omissions linked to past incidents. That same afternoon, Crockett returned to the Hill. She wore the same style of black suit she'd worn during the panel, press clean, no frills. She didn't come with a press crew, no entourage, just her legal advisor and chief of staff walking quietly beside her. Reporters tried to swarm her as she entered the building. Questions flew in from every angle. Is Elon Musk going to be subpoenaed? Did you plan this takedown ahead of time? Is this the start of a bigger political move? She didn't stop walking, but she did say one thing just loud enough for the cameras to catch. Truth has its own timing. I just listened to it inside. The real work began. Calls flooded her office. Former Tesla employees, ex-contractors, factory floor supervisors from Nevada, Texas, even Buffalo. Some were scared, some were angry, some were just ready. One of the calls came from someone she didn't expect. His name was Leroy Haynes, a former site manager in Sparks, Nevada, 64 years old, retired in 2021 He left Tesla with a clean record, no lawsuits, no headlines. I never thought I'd speak up, he said over the phone, but when you read that email about the Jackson boy, it brought everything back. I had a kid on my crew once nearly got crushed by a pallet jack that hadn't been inspected in weeks. When I filed the report they buried it, told me not to bring it up again. Crockett listened in silence. I've got copies, he added, dated, signed. I don't want money, I just want it on the record. She thanked him, told him they'd be in touch. It wasn't just her office taking the heat. Now other lawmakers started feeling the ripple too. Senator Amina Reynolds, who had been skeptical of tech regulation for years, posted on X, if Crockett's evidence checks out, we've got more than a Musk problem, we've got a system that lets giants hide bodies under innovation. Even moderate conservatives, some of whom had praised Musk's views on free speech, started softening their tone. A Florida representative said during a local town hall, you can't call it cancel culture when it's just someone asking questions with receipts. Meanwhile, Elon Musk's public image took hit after hit. He didn't post for 72 hours after the incident. That alone was unusual. When he finally returned, it wasn't with a quote or a defense, it was a single word: recovery. The comments under that post were split between sympathy and skepticism. He avoided interviews, but a statement from his legal team quietly circulated through media outlets. Mr. Musk is cooperating with ongoing reviews and has nothing to hide. He encourages a full and fair inquiry, but behind the scenes his companies were in damage control mode. Tesla issued a bulletin to employees reminding them not to engage with media inquiries. SpaceX quietly removed 3 outdated compliance officers from its leadership site, and investors in the Philippines were reportedly re-evaluating partnerships with a Musk-affiliated solar firm that had been working near Cebu, and still Jasmine Crockett didn't gloat. She released no hot takes, no social media clips of her own. She just kept taking meetings, reading files, talking to workers. And something else began happening. A growing number of citizens, teachers, nurses, warehouse workers began emailing her office, not with complaints, but with encouragement letters, messages from people who didn't know anything about factory floors or whistleblower law, but who understood what it meant to be ignored. One letter stood out. It came from an 82-year-old man in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It read, I never heard of you before Friday, but when you looked at that billionaire in the face and told the truth, I sat up straighter in my chair. You didn't just speak for yourself, you spoke for all of us who've been quiet for too long. But Crockett's biggest impact wasn't coming from inside the Capitol, it was growing from something deeper and much harder to reverse. The first time Jasmine Crockett realized things had shifted beyond politics, she was walking through a Safeway in Alameda, California. She had flown back out west to meet with former workers and labor attorneys, keeping a low profile. It wasn't an official trip, no press, no cameras, just groundwork. She was in the canned goods aisle when a woman, maybe in her late 30s, holding a toddler on her hip, stopped dead in her tracks. You're her, the woman said softly, the one who spoke up. Jasmine smiled politely, trying to keep it moving, just doing my job. But the woman didn't let it go. No, she said, you were calm, you were respectful, but you didn't back down. That matters. The toddler reached for Jasmine's folder. As they passed, she let her tiny fingers graze it before nodding and walking on. That's when it hit her. It wasn't about Elon Musk anymore. The people watching weren't reacting to a feud, they were reacting to a feeling they hadn't seen in a long time. Someone speaking the truth without hedging, without spin, and without needing a headline to do it. By the following week, Crockett was booked solid, not by choice but by demand. The Washington Post ran a feature titled, The Voice That Couldn't Be Ignored. The Atlantic asked if she was ushering in a new era of legislative grit. Even 60 Minutes called, but she declined most of it. She didn't want to become a brand, she wanted to finish what she started in closed-door meetings. Her name came up again and again among Democratic strategists, among civil rights advocates, and surprisingly even among a few weary centrists who'd grown tired of slogans with no backbone. They weren't asking if she was running for something, they were asking when at a union hall in Bakersfield she spoke to a crowd of 200 night shift workers. No speechwriters, no teleprompter, just a handheld mic and a stack of stapled notes. I'm not here to fix a PR mess, she told them. I'm here because the rules don't mean much if the powerful don't follow them. A man in the front row stood and asked the question others were thinking, do you think you embarrassed Elon Musk? Crockett gave a slight shake of her head. That was never the point. She paused, then added, he was already embarrassed. I just turned. The lights on the room erupted, not in applause but in nods, quiet murmurs, and a line of people forming afterward to speak with her one by one. Meanwhile, investigations continued to gain traction. The Jackson family formally submitted an ethics complaint to the Department of Justice, aided by a coalition of civil litigation attorneys who come forward since the broadcast. The Cebu incident triggered an emergency review by an environmental task force. 3 former subcontractors confirmed the dumping violations described in the Slack messages, and one of them named names. Media analysts stopped debating whether Crocker had won some kind of political showdown. Instead, they began tracking ripple effects, policy proposals, legal inquiries, corporate backpedaling. Tesla shares rebounded slightly, But not completely. Musk made 2 brief appearances via pre-recorded video at industry events but noticeably avoided any public-facing interviews. It was no longer about who had the louder microphone. It was about trust, and who had lost it. Crockett received a handwritten invitation to the AFL-CIO Leadership Summit. She accepted there. She told union leaders, don't wait for someone else to carry the weight. If you see something wrong, speak it out loud, even if your voice shakes. Clips from that speech were posted without her knowledge, but they spread anyway. People weren't sharing it to celebrate a political moment, they were sharing it to remind each other that speaking plainly could still move people. Not long after, a poll conducted by a mid-sized research group asked Americans to name someone they trusted to ask the questions that matter. Jasmine Crockett came in second, only behind Michelle Obama. But while her name rose on lists and lips, Crockett remained focused because she knew there was still one final message the country needed to hear. It was early fall when Jasmine Crockett finally addressed the nation directly. No big stage, no viral cameras, just a wooden podium in the congressional media room, a single flag behind her, one mic. The room was packed but quiet. She opened her notes, then looked up. I didn't come here to make headlines, she began. I came here to ask questions, to get answers, and to make sure the voices we usually don't hear get put on the record. She didn't mention Elon Musk by name, not once. Instead, she spoke about patterns, about systems, about what happens when ambition outpaces ethics, and when power goes unchallenged for too long. We reward genius in this country, she said. We celebrate it, sometimes we even worship it, but when that genius starts hurting people, workers, families, communities, and no one speaks up, that's not innovation, that's negligence with good PR. No shouting, no drama, just clarity. She laid out 3 legislative proposals, all aimed at strengthening whistleblower protections, enforcing transparency in federal contracts, and making settlement gag clauses harder to enforce against vulnerable parties. Some people would call it a long shot, but after everything that had happened, long shots didn't seem so long anymore. After the speech, reporters swarmed, flash bulbs popped, questions flew, but Crockett answered only one. A young freelance journalist asked her how did it feel sitting across from someone that powerful, and not blinking. Crockett paused, a small smile formed, tired but real. I wasn't sitting across from power, she said. I was sitting across from silence, and I refused to match it. That clip was viewed more than 22 million times within the week. In the weeks that followed, more hearings were scheduled, more documents surfaced, and more people stepped forward, not just from Tesla but from other tech companies too. Some were scared, but most were ready because someone had shown them it was possible. Crockett returned to her district holding small community forums, not glamorous ones, just tables in school gymnasiums, church basements, libraries, listening to people talk about what they'd been through, what they'd seen, what they were afraid to report. Before every time someone said, I'm not sure this matters, she would say the same thing, it matters the moment you speak it. It wasn't a soundbite, it was a belief. By the end of the year, something had changed, not everything, but enough that a few more people felt brave enough to ask hard questions in their workplaces, enough that a few more reporters stopped chasing scandal and started chasing proof, enough that a few more lawmakers realized the public wasn't just watching, they were remembering. The story didn't end with Elon Musk falling silent on live television. That was just the spark. The story kept going in courtrooms, in labor offices, in living rooms, and in every space where someone once thought their voice didn't matter, because the truth, when spoken clearly, does something powerful. It echoes, it stirs something in people who've stayed quiet for too long, and maybe most importantly, it reminds us that courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just keeps talking when everyone else wants it to stop. So if you're watching this right now, whether you're in a factory, an office, or just sitting alone thinking about something you've buried, here, this, your voice counts, and if nobody else will say it, I will. Silence is comfortable for the powerful, but it's never been safe for the rest of us. Speak, even if your voice trembles, because the truth doesn't need permission, it just needs to be told. If this story made you feel something, if it made you reflect, question, or rethink, don't let that feeling fade. Like this video, share it, and hit subscribe, because we're just getting started. And there's more truth to come. And thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.